As efforts to secure a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict continues, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to send delegations to Egypt and Qatar to push forward the negotiations. Negotiators have been trying to secure the release of Israeli hostages as part of a possible Gaza ceasefire deal. On Friday, Netanyahu's office said Netanyahu spoke with the heads of Israeli intelligence agencies Shin Bet and Mossad and approved that delegations on their behalf go to Doha and Cairo in the coming days. US President Joe Biden says he will go to Baltimore next week following a Key Bridge collapse earlier this week. Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed early on Tuesday after a cargo ship that had lost power hit the bridge in Baltimore Harbor in Maryland. Meanwhile, the US government has approved an emergency fund of $60 million for the bridge's reconstruction. A major cleanup effort is underway in the US city of Baltimore, where crews are beginning to clear up the wreckage left by a collapsed bridge earlier this week. A cargo ship collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge on Tuesday. It remains in the middle of the Patapsco River, blocking shipping traffic. Officials say they are working full speed to reopen the vital shipping channel. DD India's Sally Patterson has more.
The governor of the US state of Maryland, Wes Moore, says workers at the scene have an incredibly complex job on their hands. They're tasked with cleaning up to 4,000 tons of debris left behind after Tuesday's bridge collapse in Baltimore. Authorities believe the bodies of 4 of the victims, who are presumed dead after the collision, could be buried underneath the rubble. Governor Moore says recovering them is a top priority to bring closure, he says, to their families. His state has been awarded an initial $60 million in emergency funds by the US government to clear the vital waterway and begin rebuilding the bridge.
Government is working hand in hand with industry to investigate the area, to clear the wreck, and to move the ship. Leaders from across local and state and federal levels are gathering funds to rebuild this bridge. This work is not going to take hours. This work is not going to take days. This work is not going to take weeks. We have a very long road ahead of us.
US President Joe Biden has promised to pay for the reconstruction, stressing the importance of the Port of Baltimore to the economy. More cars and trucks go through that port each year than any other in the country. And last year it transported $80 billion worth of goods. There are concerns that there could be a spike in prices, at least temporarily, while supply chains are disrupted. And more locally, at least 8,000 workers on the docks have jobs that are directly impacted by the collapse. Meanwhile, the National Transportation Safety Board is investigating what caused the incident. The agency is interviewing the crew members from the ship, which was headed to Sri Lanka. It's also revealed the cargo ship was carrying 56 containers of hazardous materials, some of which spilled during the crash. The agency's chair called the investigation a massive undertaking, which could take up to 2 years to complete. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
Well, there's a concern over a rise in dengue across North and South America this year. The number of cases already in 2024 suggests it's likely to be the worst ever year, with places such as Puerto Rico scrambling to contain the mosquito-borne illness. Caroline Malone reports.
There have been 3.5 million cases of dengue so far only this year across the Americas. That's 3 times as many cases as there were in the first 3 months of 2023. It's setting a worrying trend for the illness that is spread by infected mosquitoes, as it can make people very sick with headaches, vomiting and severe joint pain, and it is potentially deadly. Well, one of the regions that's scrambling to contain an outbreak is the US territory of Puerto Rico, which has declared an epidemic as hospitalizations from the illness surge. Well, dengue is less common on the US mainland, but there have been cases in Florida, Texas and California states in recent years. Well, the majority of cases in the region are in Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Peru and Colombia. Scientists think that changing weather from climate change is having an impact on this year's spread. Plus, there's also El Niño, which is creating warmer temperatures and rising sea levels. Well, dengue comes from the Aedes aegypti mosquito. It's commonly found in warmer, more humid parts of the world, particularly if there's bad sanitation and water gathering where mosquitoes can breed rapidly. Last year, there were 4.5 million cases across the Americas and 2,400 reported deaths. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
Ukraine has received a $1.5 billion tranche of funding under a World Bank program, Prime Minister Denis Mihal said on Friday, helping it pay for its budget and social spending as it defends itself against the Russian invasion. Ukraine is reliant on financial aid from its Western partners, but foreign financing dwindled in the first 2 months of this year, and a US aid package has been blocked by Republicans in Congress for months.
Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine has largely depended on foreign support to cover its budget needs. Kiev uses almost all of its domestic revenues, such as taxes and customs duties, to finance its military as it continues to defend itself against Russia's invasion. A recent drop in foreign funding due to delays in aid from the US and the EU caused uncertainty at the beginning of this year, where Ukraine received only $400 million from Japan in January and $800 million of financial aid from Japan, Norway and Spain in February. Now that Ukraine has received an additional $1.5 billion from the World Bank program, and also recently the EU approving the disbursement of $4.5 billion, the outlook seems more positive, but these recent delays have raised uncomfortable questions on how Ukraine will be able to finance its expenditures if support were to stop. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Thursday he spoke to U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson on the phone, reiterating how vital it was to pass the $60 billion military aid package for Kiev, which has remained stuck in the U.S. Congress for months. He said Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities were escalating and that they can only be stopped by the physical force of defense. Megumi Lim in Kiev reporting for DD India.
Russia has vetoed the renewal of a United Nations panel of experts monitoring North Korea's compliance with international sanctions. Russia's move follows accusations from the United States, South Korea and others that Pyongyang is supplying Moscow with weapons to use in its conflict in Ukraine. South Korea termed Russia's decision as irresponsible, while the US State Department called it reckless and one that undermined international peace and security.
The United States is deeply disappointed by Russia's veto of the United Nations Security Council's 1718 Committee Panel of Experts mandate renewal. We are also disappointed that the People's Republic of China decided to abstain after 14 years of supporting this important mandate. For the past 15 years, the 1718 Committee Panel of Experts has been the gold standard for providing fact-based, independent analysis and recommendations on the implementation of UN sanctions on the DPRK.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia's veto against North Korea sanctions monitors is in Russia's own interest.
Russia's decision to veto and block the mandate of the UN Security Council of experts who monitor the enforcement of sanctions against North Korea. Does this mean the Russian policy in enforcing these sanctions has changed?
Such a position is more in line with our interest. The talk was about a group of experts. The issue is that we do not agree with the practical aspects of this project.
The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia's veto is in line with Russia's interests.
Such a position is more in line with our interests. The talk was about a group of experts. The issue is that we do not agree with the practical aspects of this project.
Migrants reenacted the Way of the Cross on the Mexican side of the border with Texas. U.S. court to keep a controversial anti-migration state law on hold. The law would make it a state crime to illegally enter or re-enter Texas from a foreign country, with prison sentences of up to 20 years for those who refuse to comply. The challenge to the Texas law is one in a series of legal disputes between Republican state officials and the Biden administration over the state's ability to police the border. Motorists who were crossing the Vasco da Gama Bridge in Lisbon on Thursday afternoon witnessed an unusual weather phenomenon. Experts call it a tornadoes or water spout swirling over the region of Lisbon. Tornadoes are not common in Europe, but do occur occasionally in the northwest and south of the continent. A tropical cyclone swept across the island of Madagascar has killed at least 18 people. The tropical cyclone Gazaine crossed the northeast of Madagascar, gusting winds of 150 kilometers per hour, displacing more than 20,000 people, wading through floodwaters. The cyclone flooded roads and led bridges to collapse. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Fans laid flowers at the Hollywood Walk of Fame star of Oscar-winning actor Louis Gossett Jr., the first black man to win an Academy Award as Best Supporting Actor after his death on Friday. Gossett's long and distinguished career began in the 1950s. He won Emmys in 1977 for TV serial Roots, which depicted the brutality of slavery. Haitians made kites on Good Friday as part of Easter traditions, bringing respite to beleaguered country. Children and adults crafted colorful paper kites, a Easter tradition in the Caribbean nation akin to painting eggs. This Easter in Haiti comes as the country awaits a presidential council to be appointed after Prime Minister Ariel Henry announced his resignation on March 11. Pope Francis cancelled at the last minute his attendance at the Good Friday procession at Rome to preserve his health ahead of more Easter week engagements. Good Friday leads on Sunday to Easter, the most important and joyous date in the Church's liturgical calendar. Bolivian, Argentine and Peruvian artists spent part of Good Friday carving large religious images depicting the Way of the Cross stations out of sand in dunes in western Bolivia. The festival is an annual tradition that has been running for over 17 years, drawing large numbers to marvel at the sand creations. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. We'll tell you in detail how elections in India are celebrated. Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur has launched Startup Clusters 3, 4 and 5 at New Delhi. Stay tuned for more details. Indo-Aussie pair of Bopanna and Ebden will take on Evan and Austin in the Miami Open Finals today.
As the cycle of accountability returns, the time has come when the biggest democracy chooses to write another chapter in its glorious history. Development, justice, regionalism, a big political canvas. Everything will be put to test in this mega battle for glory. DD India dissects what makes elections 2024 the battle royale in Indian politics. Data and analysis free from bias to help you understand why India matters. The Great Indian Election on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj. India's President Draupadi Murmu will present the highest civilian award, Bharat Ratna, at Rashtrapati Bhavan today. Former Prime Ministers Chaudhry Charan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao, former Bihar Chief Minister Karpuri Thakur and eminent scientist MS Swaminathan will be given Bharat Ratna posthumously. Former Deputy Prime Minister and veteran BJP leader L.K. Advani will also be given the top civilian award of the country. In yet another heroic show of valor, the Indian Navy freed at least 23 Pakistani nationals from the grasp of Somali pirates after a 12-hour operation in the Arabian Sea. The rescue happened in the early hours of March 29 when the pirate-held hijacked vessel FV Al-Kambar was intercepted by the Indian Navy cruiser INS Sumedha. With quick thinking, the guided missile frigate INS Trishul quickly joined INS Sumedha to support the mission. Indian naval troops used their strategic planning and strategic coordination to initiate negotiations with the pirates, compelling them to surrender without bloodshed. India's Minister of External Affairs S. Jaishankar held talks with his Ukrainian counterpart Dmytro Kuleba in New Delhi on Friday. Their discussions focused on the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict and its wider ramifications. They also exchanged views on global and regional issues. Minister Jaishankar reiterated India's commitment to strengthen the overall relationship, including bilateral cooperation.
Very glad that despite some of our bilateral mechanisms have also met, I think this has created a certain momentum in our bilateral relationship. Today, after this discussion in the afternoon, we look forward also to the meeting of the Intergovernmental Commission.
Let's get you the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic election. Elections in India have been festive occasions almost like carnivals. Citizens choose leaders for their local bodies, state legislatures, and of course their nation, India. Here's a report on the scale and vastness of elections in India.
These are not moments of jubilation for a marriage or a family occasion. Neither it's the fervor of Diwali, the celebration of light, or Holi, the festival of colors. These are celebrations India witnesses round the year, the celebrations during the festival of elections. These happen in different pockets of India at different times of a year, and it happens almost every year. The objective of these festivities celebrated by citizens of India is to choose leaders and representatives who would run their municipalities, states, and also their nation, India. The carnival of the world's largest democracy is set to reach its peak in the next few weeks across all pockets of the country as India prepares for the general elections. It's a carnival in every sense of the word, in terms of spectacle of colors, hurly-burly, noise and exuberance. It's a festival of people's participation to run a country that has set benchmarks hard to match anywhere else in the world. The festival is observed by all Indian adults who are 18 years and above. The organizer of the major elections across the country is the Election Commission of India, or the ECI. The Election Commission is an autonomous body set up under the provisions of the Indian Constitution. It's responsible for administering the national and state election processes in the country. The body conducts and supervises elections to the Indian Parliament, comprising the Lok Sabha, the lower house, and the Rajya Sabha, the upper house. It is also responsible for the elections to the legislative assemblies and legislative councils of the 28 Indian states and the offices of the President and Vice President of India. Elections in 3 union territories, including India's capital New Delhi, Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir, is also conducted by the Election Commission. In the elections to the Lok Sabha, citizens of India vote directly to elect the representatives in the Parliament's lower house. these elected members eventually decide on the country's Prime Minister, usually the leader of the party or the coalition with maximum representation in the House. The elections to the state assemblies decide on the heads of the state governments known as the chief ministers. This year too, the ECI is slated to conduct elections in 6 Indian states, but the mother of all polls, the general elections, is being organized by the ECI, its first major assignment this year. The election authority is all geared up for the biggest task. This is the exercise it undertakes once every 5 years. It now faces the Herculean task of conducting elections to the 543 seats of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, which would involve huge logistic, security and organizational engagement. The winners of these seats will eventually decide the next national government and the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy, India.
Ahead of the upcoming general elections, Congress has released 9th candidates list in their Central Election Committee meeting on Friday. The 5 candidates list is for 3 seats in southern state of Karnataka and 2 seats in northern state of Rajasthan. India's Election Commission has issued a notification banning the conduct, publication or publicizing of exit polls between April 19 till June 1st, when votes will be cast for the Lok Sabha and Assembly elections to be held in 4 states, including northeastern states of Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, eastern states of Odisha and southern state of Andhra Pradesh, as well as by-elections to be held in different states. The National Technology Innovation Hub of Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, has launched Startup Clusters 3, 4 and 5 at New Delhi. The Startup Incubation Program featured 19 startups specializing in specific cybersecurity areas, including application security, cyber forensics, blockchain technology, UAV security, Internet of Things security and cyber insurance. The project director at C3I Hub, Professor Manindra Agarwal, said, "This day marks a significant milestone for C3I Hub."
Today we are adding 19 more startups to our group. The charter of Technology Innovation Hub at IIT Kanpur is to develop and deploy technologies in cybersecurity and also to promote startups in the same domain. So as part of that charter, we are conducting this program.
Let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's esteemed Business School of Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, has set a record in placements. The institution has placed record-breaking 516 students in 163 firms this year. India's National Investigation Agency, NIA, has announced 10 lakh award each and reveals identities of the wanted terrorists Abdul Mateen Ahmed Taha and Musawwir Hussain Shazib in Rameshwaram cafe blast case. Both terrorists have been using forged Hindu identity documents, forged Aadhaar card and forged driving license. The IED explosion at the Rameshwaram cafe of Bengaluru during lunchtime on March 1st had left 9 injured. Well, time now for sports. The Kolkata Knight Riders on Friday managed to become the first side to win a game away as they beat the Royal Challengers Bangalore by 7 wickets to make it 2 wins in as many games. KKR chased down a total of 183 with power play heroics by Sunil Narayan, who set the tone with a fine knock of 47 to make his 500th T20 appearance even more special. Meanwhile, Lucknow Super Giants will take on Punjab Kings at the Ikana Cricket Stadium in Lucknow today. India's seasoned player Rohan Bopanna and his Australian teammate Matthew Ebden will take on Croatia's Ivan Dojic and his American partner Austin Krajicek in Miami Open finals today. The duo sealed a solid straight sets win over Spain's Marcin Granollers and his Argentine partner Horacio Zeballos by 6-1, 6-4. Earlier, the Indo-Aussie pair beat Australia's Sam Verbeek and his Netherlands partner John Patrick Smith in the quarterfinals. That's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Bharat Ratna Awards from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.